Hardcore Henry. So this is the movie that's entirely in first person, filmed entirely on a Nike GoPro. Maybe not Nike. I feel like it's Nike GoPro. Whatever. Wesley. They don't care. It's essentially Call of Duty the movie. It does one thing, and that one thing is first person, like, intense action sequences. And for the most part, it does it really well. It's such a unique movie. Like, occasionally you'll have a gun in the corner of a screen from a movie, or there's a Doom, the movie has a pretty cool first person sequence, but it's all the way at the end. But this movie is entirely in first person. So the plot is you're Henry, you got your first silent protagonist in a movie. You never see his face, you never hear his voice. And, you know, he's got a wife, and, you know, he was blown up in a horrible accident or something, I don't even care or remember. And then you just attaching all these cybernetic components, and now he's a super robot cyborg guy. Haley Bennett, who plays the hot wife, she's there to be hot, really, that's it. She tries to act a little at the end, and it's like, eh. This movie has some pretty stunning action sequences. They're really impressively choreographed, because a lot of them are like, okay, one take. We're gonna go through this whole building in one take, one shot of a camera. And you're shooting people, and there's parkour, and there's hand-to-hand combat, and it's just like looking around and killing people in different ways as they come into a room. Is thoroughly entertaining, and there's blood and gore everywhere. Makeup's super impressive, by the way. But there's like fire and explosion effects that are like really bad CGI. But there's a sequence in particular where him and Sharlto Copley, who plays Jimmy, great, by the way. He adds so much to this movie because he dies, but there's like a bunch of him, so he has different personalities. And he's pretty funny too. A lot of good comic relief comes from him. And there's a part where Henry and Jimmy are just sniping like in his compound, and then just from there they go through and defend the building, and it's like a video game objective. It's like there's a guy in the elevator, don't let the elevator hit the ground before you do, don't let any harm come to the guy in the elevator. And it's done entirely in one take, and it looks fantastic. So then the whole thing about this movie is like, uh-oh, is there gonna be shaky cam? Is this gonna make me puke? And yeah, initially there's kind of a lot of shaky cam. Luckily the camera that they filmed it on has kind of a fishbowl effect, so it's like this instead of like this. So the field of view is wider and more representation of a human eye. So it's not as bad, but there are some times where, yeah, he's getting punched around and he's falling and looking from platform to platform, and you just close your eyes and just give it a second. It does pass. But for the most part, the action sequences aren't too bad. I find what bothers me more than the shaky cam, though, is the cutting of the footage. Because, like, obviously, for when you're, like, going in a van, you gotta go to the next objective, or if you're just talking or nothing's really happening, you can cut to save time. But in an action sequence, when they're, like, moving through somewhere, and it'll just cut out a couple seconds here and here, that's really disorienting. Because you're, like, used to it following where you want it to go, and then it stops, and it just skips ahead of you, so now you're out of sync with where the camera's going. That's why frame rate drops in video games are such a pain in the ass. Because, like, you're moving the stick forward, and you want to move the stick left, but the game doesn't register that. It's because it's dropping frames, so it's still going forward, but you've already adjusted to going this way, so now you think you're controlling it that way, and then when the game doesn't do that as well, there's now a disconnect between you and the game, and it's like, what, where, and it takes a second to get back into sync of things. And in a game where you're getting shot at and killed, that's really, really bad. The plot is pretty It's like, hey, this guy stole your wife, now go kill everybody and get your wife back. I mean, it's a very unrealistic movie. I think they're in Russia, fair enough, but like, why are there so many just video game bad guys everywhere, like in the whole city? And the bad guy's an albino who has the Force, like straight up. Like initially I'm like, oh, you're a cyborg, so maybe he's got, because you know, he made your technology, so maybe he knows how to, nope, he just has the Force. That's never explained at all. This movie's out of theaters by now, so sorry I'm late, but it's definitely worth seeing. When it comes to Redbox, check it out. It's a solid action movie. Just for how unique it is and for the different like, experience that it provides. I really like the end credits song. It's in my favorites playlist if you didn't notice. It's For the Kill. I'm gonna give Hardcore Henry a 7 out of 10.